Israel in the past few days. I've spoken with families in Ottawa who have been directly affected by these terrible attacks. On Monday evening, I joined the Prime Minister, the leader of the official opposition, several members of council, and other community leaders at a gathering at the Jewish Community Center. As I said that night, we must come together with one voice and reject terrorism and call for an end to the senseless violence against innocent civilian lives. Our thoughts are with all of the people of Ottawa who have been affected by these events and with the people of Israel. Let's pause now, and please rise if you're able to do so for a moment of personal reflection. Thank you, merci. And please remain standing. I'm going to ask Councillor Carr now to introduce the performers of our national anthem today.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Je suis très heureuse aujourd'hui de vous présenter la chorale Entre Nous.
Very happy today to introduce you to the Entre Nous choir, who's bilingual and has been in existence for 28 years.
Singers from across the National Capital Region who gather each week to share the joy of making music in community, to develop their musical skills, and to increase their connections. Their gathering spot is the Heron Road Community Centre, located in Alta Vista Ward. Under the auspices of the Retired Teachers of Ontario, Chorale Entre Nous Choir has a mission of service and goodwill, offering musical presentations throughout the year to residents of seniors' homes and in long-term care. J'ajouterai que la mission de Chorale Entre Nous me parle vraiment.
I would add that I really like choir. We have published a declaration to underline the 1st of October, the National Day of Seniors. And if we have a group of retired people who volunteer to share joys with other groups in the community, it's great.
Thank you very much once again to our performers. Merci beaucoup. As we begin our meeting today, and on behalf of Ottawa City Council, I wish to acknowledge that Ottawa is built on unceded Anishinaabe Algonquin territory. The peoples of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. The City of Ottawa honors the peoples and the land of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation and honors all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples and their valuable past and present contributions to this land. Today, I'm pleased to announce the launch of the City of Ottawa's 2023 United Way East Ontario Employee Campaign. Aujourd'hui, j'ai le plaisir d'annoncer le lancement de la campagne
So
des
today I am pleased to announce the launch of the City of Ottawa 2023 United Way East Ontario Employee Campaign.
We, of course, see every day the impact that United Way makes on our city. Last year alone, the work of United Way East Ontario assisted over 120,000 residents across Ottawa and Eastern Ontario through their work with incredible organizations like Employment Accessibility Resource Network, Hire Immigrants Ottawa, and Project STEP. They're always there for us and have been for so many years. And they are there for the residents of Ottawa. They're there when the city has had to confront significant challenges in the past. Ils ont été à nos côtés dans certaines de
They
nos
were beside us in difficult periods, such as during the COVID-19.
Human Needs Task Force and to Ottawa Public Health, assisting with mask distribution, support for isolated seniors, and food delivery. United Way's efforts to break down barriers, improve lives, and create opportunities for those who need it most go hand in hand with the work of our dedicated city staff. And since 2001, the United Way has been the City of Ottawa's corporate charity. These efforts have helped tens of thousands of residents and families, and I've had the privilege of working with the United Way for many years myself. I was the board chair for a couple of years, about 20 years ago now, and the fundraising co-chair in 2015. And I'll tell you, it was one of the most fulfilling experiences of my volunteer career. I was able to see firsthand the extraordinary impact that fundraising campaigns like this one can have for Ottawa residents. This year, the City of Ottawa's goal is to raise $300,000 in support of the United Way. Cette année, l'objectif de la Ville d'Ottawa est de recueillir.
This year, the City of Ottawa goals is to raise $300,000 in support of the United Way.
Leading us to this goal will be the honorary campaign chair, Councillor Laura Dudas, and campaign chair for the City of Ottawa 2023 United Way Employee Campaign, General Manager Dan Chenier. Assisting them throughout the campaign will be Mark Taylor, Vice President of Resource Development for United Way East Ontario, and of course, no stranger to this council chamber, and Lauren Bussière, the City of Ottawa Staff Campaign Manager. I want to encourage all my council colleagues and any city employees who have the means to do so to please donate to this really important campaign. Chaque jour, les employés de la Ville d'Ottawa.
Every day, the employees of the city and United Way make a difference in this community and make it a better place where to live.
By contributing to United Way, we are helping to build stronger, more caring, and healthier communities. It's now my pleasure to ask Mark Taylor to come to the podium to say a few words. Mark?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and good morning, everyone. Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs. C'est un grand plaisir pour moi d'être ici.
I'm very happy to be here today.
And this is the first time I've had the opportunity to be back in council chambers, I think, post the pandemic, and it's a little quieter than I remember, but I guess now you have to navigate the online presence of folks as well. So everything evolves and changes. As you said, I'm pleased to be joined this morning by my colleague Stephanie Smith from United Way, Christy Caccioni from our Ottawa Police Service, and Lauren Bussière from Parks and Recreation, who are all assisting in this year's United Way campaign. You know, my role here today is to thank the City of Ottawa staff for their exceptional generosity to United Way over the years. Our partnership goes back decades, and the support of the city in lifting up our community is as clear as the names of the community builders etched into the wall over there in Jean Piggott Hall. And our partnership has never been stronger. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your continued engagement with us around the issues affecting all of us and the most vulnerable of us. I know you just spoke up yesterday on World Mental Health Day about the issues affecting all of us. And in the next few weeks, we're looking forward to rolling up our sleeves again to ensure the work of Project STEP continues and that we focus even more closely on our community's mental health. Councillor Dudas, thank you for your involvement in our work and shared goals of helping kids to be all that they can be, building healthy people and strong communities, and moving people from poverty to possibility. Councillor Lowe, we welcome you to our board representing the City of Ottawa, and Councillor Troster, thank you for being a champion of our Women United work. And while all of you are certainly employees of the city, you are not the majority sitting around this horseshoe. Through your efforts and leadership, they are needed and they are welcome. They take place among the hundreds of city employees who just last year alone, with other United Way donors, helped over 122,000 people in our community get the support they needed. It improved the mental health outcomes of over 2,000 children, supported 226 youth who were living in emergency shelters or transitional housing to live independently, and got just under 40,000 people immediate crisis supports, and kept 1,500 vulnerable seniors connected, safe, and healthy. City staff work hard every day to ensure our community's needs are met, and we want you to know that you are not alone in that. Because of your participation in supporting the United Way, whether you work in Parks and Recreation, the police service, public health, or infrastructure services, along with your colleagues from every other department, we can be there with you, securing the security and the social infrastructure that is the bedrock of our community. By making a donation to the United Way, you are supporting some of our most vulnerable people, including at-risk children, youth, families facing homelessness, vulnerable seniors and caregivers, people facing mental health and problematic substance use challenges. I want to thank you in advance for the unprecedented effort that you will put in this year to change lives of many people, many of whom you may never have the opportunity to meet. I always think it's one of the most noble blessings of a United Way campaign that people get the opportunity to, yes, come together, yes, have fun, yes, engage with your colleagues, but you are also silently moving the yardsticks for so many people in our community. And though you may never meet them and they may never meet you, you have absolutely affected the trajectory of their lives for the better. So to all the city staff who will be engaged this year and all of our elected officials who are championing the campaign, merci beaucoup, thank you very much, and we wish you a fantastic campaign.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much. Great to welcome you back here. And again, I want to thank Councillor Dudas and Dan Chenier for their leadership of the campaign this year, and Lauren as well, thank you. And I want to say good luck with the fundraising, and I hope it's a very successful campaign, and those who are able to do so give generously. Thank you, merci beaucoup. And I'll now ask the Deputy Clerk to do the roll call, please.
Councillor Luloff?
Bonjour.
Councillor Dudas? Ici. Councillor Hill?
Present.
Councillor Curry? Here. Councillor Kelly?
Present.
Councillor Gower?
Here.
Councillor Kavanaugh? Here. Councillor Johnson?
Here.
Councillor Devine?
Here.
Councillor Bradley?
Here.
Councillor Tierney?
Present.
Councillor Plante?
Ici.
Councillor King?
Here.
Councillor Troster?
Here.
Councillor Leeper?
Good morning.
Councillor Brockington?
Here.
Councillor Menard? Councillor Carr?
Here.
Councillor Kitts?
Here.
Councillor DeRuse?
Here.
Councillor Brown?
Here.
Councillor DeRoche?
Here.
Councillor Hubley?
Here.
Councillor Lowe?
Here.
Mayor Sutcliffe?
Here.
You have a quorum, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Confirmation of minutes from the City Council meeting of September 27th. Are the minutes carried? Are there any declarations of interest? I will note the communications, including the response to inquiries on the agenda. We did not receive any regrets, so I'll ask Councillor Gower now for a motion to introduce reports.
That Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee Report 7, Community Services Committee Report 5, Finance and Corporate Services Committee Report 8, Light Rail Subcommittee Report 7, Planning and Housing Committee Report 16, Transportation Committee Report 8, and the report from the City Clerk entitled Summary of Oral and Written Public Submissions for Items Subject to the Planning Act, Explanation Requirements, at the City Council meeting of September 27, 2023, be received and considered.
Is the motion carried? Item 11 is the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee report. 11.1 is the zoning bylaw amendment for part of 5134 Piperville Road. Is that carried?
Carried.
Item 11.2 is the zoning bylaw amendment for 5646 and 5650 Manotick Main Street. And I understand there's a technical amendment. Councillor DeBruce?
Good morning, everyone. Whereas the report ACS 2023 pre-PS 0119, the report recommends amending the City of Ottawa zoning bylaw to permit restaurant with a drive-through at 5646 and 5650 Manotick Main Street. And whereas the report recommends creating a new rural exemption to facilitate the amendment, but unintentionally omits a provision that recommends rezoning the lands to the new exception. Therefore, be it resolved that Council amend Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee Report 7, Item 2, zoning bylaw amendment 5646 and 5650 Manotick Main Street by amending recommendation 1 to read as follows: that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend Council approve an amendment to zoning bylaw 2008-50 for 5646 and 5650 Manotick Main Street as shown in document 1 to rezone the lands from rural commercial zone subzone 1 exception 152R to rural commercial zone subzone 1 exception RC1 to permit a restaurant with a drive-through as detailed in document 2, and be it further resolved that there will be no further notice pursuant to subsection 3417 of the Planning Act. This technical amendment, Mr. Mayor.
All right, is that motion carried? And then is the recommendation as amended carried? Item 11.3 is the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment for 2545 9th Line Road. Is that carried? 11.4 is the zoning bylaw amendment regarding aligning zoning bylaw 2008-250 with Bill 23 concerning additional dwelling units. And there is a technical amendment from Councillor Leeper on that. Councillor Leeper?
Thank you, and Councillor DeRuz is seconding this. Whereas due to an oversight in drafting, 2 technical amendments are required to correct the details of recommended zoning in the report. Therefore, be it resolved that the table following the words amend Part 15 exceptions as follows in document 1 of the report be amended by replacing the words in column 2 of row 2 miscellaneous exceptions by replacing each instance of the word secondary dwelling unit with the words additional dwelling unit in exceptions 225, 303, 630, 640, 731, 769, 1564, 1644, 1648, 1649, 1963, 1964, 2064, and 2110. There will be a test. And be it further resolved, the document 1 of the report be amended by adding the following: amend section 109 by adding the following: rear yard parking in residential zones 11 in the R1, R2, R3, and R5 zones. A, no more than 70% of the rear yard area may be occupied by parking spaces and driveways and aisles accessing parking. B, at least 15% of the rear yard area must be provided as soft landscaping. C, no provisions of amending bylaw 2023 XXX Act to prevent the issuance of a building permit for which a completed application for site plan control committee of adjustment approval, zoning amendment, or building permit was received by the city or for which a decision was rendered by the Ontario Land Tribunal before October 11, 2023, and such applications may be processed under the provisions in place prior to this amendment. D, subsection C is repealed on October 11, 2024, 1 year after the date of the adoption by council, and be it further resolved that no further notice be provided pursuant to subsection 3417 of the Planning Act. Next time I'm getting George to move that one.
All right, is the technical amendment carried? And is the motion as amended carried? Item 11.5 is the engineer's report amendments to the Simpson Municipal Drain construction. Is that carried? Item 12 is Community Services Committee. 12.1 is the Ottawa Community Housing Corporation mortgage refinancing 2023-24. Is that carried? 12.2 is the Community Partnership Capital Grant Program's Annual Report. Is that carried? Item 13 is Finance and Corporate Services Committee. Item 13.1 is the Municipal Price Index Feasibility Review. Is that received? Item 13.2 is the Comprehensive Legal Services Report for the period January 1 to June 30th. Is that received? Item 13.3 is the request to waive the leasing policy for LRT retail spaces. Is that carried? Sorry, just a dissent on that from Councillor Menard. Item 14 is the Light Rail Subcommittee. Item 14.1, Action Plan Status Update Response to OLRT Public Inquiry Recommendations. Is that received? Item 15, Planning and Housing Committee. 15.1 is the Official Plan and Zoning Bylaw Amendment for 200 Clearview Avenue. And again, there's a technical amendment. Councillor Leeper.
Thank you, Vice Chair Gower, for seconding this. Whereas report recommends amending the City of Ottawa zoning bylaw to permit a 25-story residential high-rise building at 200 Clearview Avenue, and whereas document 3 contains a provision deleting urban exception 313 in its entirety, whereas urban exception 313 contains zoning provisions that apply to lands other than the lands at 200 Clearview Avenue. Therefore, be it resolved, the Council amend Planning and Housing Committee Report 16, Item 1, Official Plan and Zoning Bylaw Amendment 200 Clearview, by replacing the text in document 3, section 2 with the text amend section 239 urban exceptions by deleting the provision in column 5 of urban exception 313 that reads, despite the above provisions, an underground parking garage is permitted as shown on schedule 216, and therefore be it resolved that there be no further notice pursuant to section 3417 of the Planning Act.
Thank you, Councillor Leeper. Is the amendment carried? All right, and the recommendation as amended, is that carried? Item 15.2 is the zoning bylaw amendment for 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, and 24 Hawthorne Avenue. And I believe there is a motion from Councillor Menard.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and thanks for folks for indulging in what will be a few minutes here. I'm going to read in the motion, and then I'll just have a couple of comments and questions. So whereas Planning and Housing Committee recommended Council to approve a zoning bylaw amendment in accordance with the report for 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, and 24 Hawthorne Avenue as presented at the October 4th, 2023 meeting, and whereas during the October 4th committee discussion, public delegations and committee members' concerns were raised with respect to the proposed development providing more parking than the minimum zoning requirements with a design that did not allow for large mature trees in the rear yard. And whereas the official plan in section 4.8.2 prescribes that space be provided for mature, healthy trees on private and public property, including the provision of adequate volumes of high quality soil. And whereas following the October 4th committee meeting, staff worked with the applicant team, receiving updated plans to revise the design of the parking garage by notching out the southwest corner, resulting in the removal of 4 parking spaces, which allows for a large matured tree planting area in the rear yard. And whereas the design of the planter box above the underground garage has been further designed to remove the previously proposed small trees with the replacement of sufficient soil volume for 4 medium-sized trees, achieving an appropriate urban canopy for the given site. Therefore, be it resolved that Schedule YYY in Document 3 be replaced with the attached schedule, which adds a new restricted buildable area in the rear yard where no buildings and structures above or below grade are permitted, to align with the revised landscape plan showing a large tree in this location. And be it further resolved that Document 2, details of the recommended zoning, be amended by deleting the text of provision I and replacing it with maximum building heights, minimum step backs, and restricted buildable area as per Schedule YYY. Be it further resolved that pursuant to subsection 3417 of the Planning Act, no further notice be given. And I'll just motivate a bit here with this, Mayor. I think we were able to change this application and appreciated the committee discussion on this for the rear yard and the motion, but the application overall, there's some positives here in terms of preserving ground floor commercial space, which initially sought to remove this requirement. That was a recent change we have made to the zoning in this area in Old Ottawa East. We were also able to work with the applicant to provide some relief to existing tenants, with each existing household provided funds to help with the cost of displacement to $12,000, and displacement protection should be policy in the province and the city, in my view. The current policy direction under the city's new official plan calls for, as the first redevelopment on the Hawthorne Avenue corridor in a generation, and the first since the adoption of the new official plan. This application will set a good precedent for the street. I was happy to see that an amendment to the old Ottawa East secondary plan was not sought here. Of course, there's additional stepbacks and setbacks that we've also seen, and additional bicycle parking, but the parking has remained above the minimum requirement. So I want to thank committee for their discussions here. The motion before us will see those 4 parking stalls removed between the 2 stories of parking, and those stalls will allow for soil depth in the southwest corner of the lot sufficient for a large mature tree to grow. And of course, we're replacing some of those trees with more trees in the area. So just a couple questions for staff on this, Mayor, is can staff please just describe what this motion means for those trees on site, including the changes made to the planter?
Thank you, Mayor. The notch that is being taken out of the parking garage at the southwest corner will allow for a similar sized tree to what is there today. I believe it's a bur oak. So it will be at least 2 stories in depth of soil volume in that corner that will allow for a full-size, large, mature tree. The discussions that we've had with the applicant with respect to the planter boxes will add additional volume to ensure even greater likelihood of the survivability or the viability of medium-sized trees across the rear of the property to enhance privacy for the neighboring properties as well.
Thank you for that. And this is an important one to the community. There's 2 trees back there, and there's also a large hedge. It's not a normal hedge. It's about half the height of those trees on that east side, and it has a lot of privacy protection in there. So it's on the neighboring property to the south, as I understand it exists there. That's essentially on the property line. So are staff committed to preserving that hedge through the site plan control process? If so, how is that going to be accomplished? And should residents feel confident that hedge will survive, working with that developer and the local community in the area?
Mayor, the hedge is identified on the landscape plan currently, so we're fully aware of and conscious of it through the site plan process. As is the case in every situation, we would look to preserve and not negatively impact neighboring properties. So there will be, preservation measures introduced through site plan to do what we can to protect that. I can't say today exactly what those measures will be because we're not at that stage, but it is something that we're conscious of, and we'll be looking for the developer to, provide a plan to preserve that hedge.
Okay, well, thanks. I think ideally, obviously, you would have seen a different design for the parking in this area that's on the underground lot further set back. But given where we are at this stage in the application, and given the many modifications and the work of staff and the community on this, I think there's a lot of positive benefits to this too. So ready to support the application with staff confirming that they're going to do everything they can to maintain that hedge and that privacy for those rear yard neighbors, as well as that new tree growth. So thanks to folks for working on this and for committee's long discussion on this about a week ago. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Menard. Councillor Curry.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like a further staff comment on this, but I will just say that the challenge with this coming to council is that now we cannot hear from the developer as to what this really means. So really, my question to staff is, are we to understand that developers perfectly happy with this? This is doable. This isn't going to set them back with any particular timeline. This isn't causing any problem at all, because my overall comment is that this is the kind of thing that needs to be dealt with prior to planning committee, not even at planning committee, but prior to planning committee, so that when it comes to planning committee, all of these things are sorted out. So instead now, this wasn't sorted out prior, it wasn't sorted out at planning committee, now it's being sorted out at council. And I just find that this now then makes us we have an inability now to even hear from the developer themselves. But so my question to staff is, can you reassure us that this has not created any problems? The developer is perfectly happy with this. This is all going to be smooth now.
Chair, we've worked very closely with the applicant to work through this motion. The applicant is content with the notch out of the corner. It was something that they were able to accommodate without a full redesign of the building. It's a minor redesign in the corner of the parking structure and will not impact the building as a whole. So in short, the applicant is content with this motion.
My second question is, why then could this not have been sorted out months ago?
Chair, I think through the planning process, there's a place for staff, and staff come forward with a recommendation based on professional advice and our policies. There's a role for councillors to bring forward additional concerns and discussion through the process, and the purpose of the public meeting is to ensure that there's a fair hearing of all of those concerns brought forward and represented by the members of the public, but as well as by local councillors. Staff were supportive of the recommendation that we brought forward that did not include this notch. Through the discussion that took place at Planning Committee, there was additional recognition that there more could be done, and so we've worked with the applicant to do that. I think we are going to see more of this as we enter into the Bill 109 timelines, and we've got, my apologies, 90 days to resolve things before they come to council. We're going to be in a rush, and there's going to be more situations where we're having discussions continually right up until the last minute.
Wow, we can look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. All right, then, is the motion carried, the amendment carried? And then as amended, is that carried? Item 15.3, Ottawa Community Lands Development Corporation 2022 Annual Report. Is that received? Item 16 is Transportation Committee. 16.1 is the all-way protected permitted left turn signals at intersection of Bank Street and Mitch Owens Road. Is that carried? Item 16.2 is the Council Sponsors Group for the Transportation Master Plan, and I understand there is an amendment, a friendly amendment from Councillor Kavanagh, seconded by the chair of the committee, Councillor Tierney. Is that right? Councillor Kavanagh?
Be it resolved that Councillor Jessica Bradley be added as an additional member of the Transportation Master Plan Council Sponsorship Group.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Tierney?
Great, and thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I want to thank members of council who knew transportation was such a popular thing with such a large committee and such interest in it. This was a really difficult process to be able to get the regional representation, the balance, all the things that we want in this working group. So I think we've struck a good balance on this one. So I'll skip to, therefore, be it resolved that council appoint now with the new resolution that's come in, friendly amendment, 7 members of council to the Transportation Master Plan Sponsors Group as follows: myself as chair, Transportation Committee, Vice Chair Kitts as Transportation Vice Chair, and also a rural representative, Councillor Hill from a suburban perspective, Councillor Troster from inner urban downtown, Councillor George DeRuse, a member of ARAC, and Councillor Hubley, as well as the addition of Councillor Bradley. I hope to have your support today, members of council.
Councillor Desroches.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and just a question to staff. This is new to me. I don't recall having a lot of these working groups during my span of time here previously, and I can recall in your orientation briefing, I thought there was some concerns over the size of these committees. Just at some point it triggers concerns over official meetings of council and triggering sort of an apparatus where we would have minutes and what have you, and rightly so in the interest of sort of transparency in that. So I appreciate, as the chair just said, a transportation committee, it's a challenge to sort of balance all the needs. I just wonder from staff, at what point are we at the tipping point where we are into an official meeting that would then trigger the apparatus of government, where we would need to have minutes and advertise those meetings? I seem to recall there was some risk with that. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, generally speaking, the guidance for council sponsors groups would be to avoid the quorum of, obviously, a quorum of council, as well as a quorum of the relevant standing committee that has jurisdiction for the subject matter. As proposed, the sponsors group makeup would not exceed would not achieve quorum of transportation committee.
It's the quorum of the transportation committee, not the quorum of the council?
Yes, so we recommend that there not be a quorum of the standing committee that has jurisdiction for the subject matter, which in this case would be the Transportation Committee.
And again, just because I'm new to this, I think as a resident, you say, well, 14 councillors want to be on this. This must be a very powerful group making decisions. This is not a decision-making body of this council. We'll have a role as councillors to sort of influence this policy going forward. It's not determining the sequencing of projects. It's not deciding, where funding will go in terms of the development charges that are being collected. Could you just clarify that? Because again, I see 14 and I think, well, let's put all 14. I hear there's, restrictions in terms of the quorum, rightly so. But I think when you see that much interest, the public will say, well, what is this group doing that there's such a tremendous interest?
Mr. Chair, I'll ask the General Manager of Planning, Real Estate and Economic Development to add anything, but the sponsors group would meet with staff. They would not be making recommendations or making decisions as a standing committee would. They would ultimately provide input into staff's review of the transportation master plan and ultimate recommendations. My understanding is that the Director of Transportation Planning also indicated at committee that staff would be consulting with all members of council as part of that project.
Thank you again. I appreciate the clarification because it's new to me. I'll take the good advice of the chair of the transportation in this case. I think we have to watch it very closely when we get into governance, just in terms of the size of these groups. I don't think they were ever intended to be this big, or an opportunity to give, councillors some vantage that is not provided to other councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Desroches. So on the amendment from Councillor Kavanagh, is that carried? And then the motion from Councillor Tierney as amended, is that carried? On the bulk consent agenda, is that carried? All right, there are no in-camera items, so we will move to a motion to adopt reports. Councillor Gower.
That Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee Report 7, Community Services Committee Report 5, Finance and Corporate Services Committee Report 8, Light Rail Subcommittee Report 7, Planning and Housing Committee Report 16, Transportation Committee Report 8, and the report from the City Clerk entitled Summary of Oral and Written Public Submissions for Items Subject to the Planning Act Explanation Requirements at the City Council meeting of September 27, 2023, be received and adopted as amended.
Is that carried? Motions requiring suspension of the rules of procedure. First, we have a motion from Councillor Bradley on the appointment of Honorary Council Co-Chair for the 2023 City of Ottawa Employee United Way campaign on suspension of the rules. Is that carried? Councillor Bradley?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to move this motion. So whereas United East Ontario has been the City of Ottawa's corporate charity and has participated in an annual employee campaign since 2001, and whereas United Way East Ontario brings people from different organizations together to create long-lasting social change through its 3 focus areas, All the Kids Can Be, From Poverty to Possibility, and Healthy People, Strong Communities, and whereas United Way East Ontario launches its annual fundraising campaign every fall to support local charities committed to 100% local impact, and whereas the city continues to use the United Way's e-pledge donation program to allow employees to donate, and whereas the chair of the Community Services Committee has historically taken on the role of honorary co-chair for the city's employee campaign, and whereas Chair Laura Dudas has indicated her willingness to continue in this capacity for the 2023 campaign, and whereas the honorary council co-chair will work with the General Manager of Recreation, Cultural and Facility Services on the 2023 City of Ottawa Employee United Way campaign, and therefore be it resolved that council appoint Councillor Dudas as the honorary council co-chair for the 2023 City of Ottawa Employee United Way campaign.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Is the motion carried? Thank you again, Councillor Dudas, for serving in this role. Next is a motion from Councillor Troster, road closures for the law enforcement torch run for Special Olympics on suspension of the rules. Is that carried? Councillor Troster?
Thank you, Mayor. Whereas the Law Enforcement Torch Run for Special Olympics is a fundraising and public awareness effort for Special Olympics Ontario. And whereas the Ottawa Law Enforcement Torch Run for Special Olympics will occur on Thursday, October 12th, 2023. And whereas there will be rolling road closures performed by the Ottawa Police Service along the route of Elgin Street between 474 Elgin Street and Wellington Street between Elgin Street and Bank Street between Wellington Street and Argyle Avenue, and Argyle Avenue between Bank Street and Elgin Street. And whereas the rolling road closures will take place between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m., and whereas the City of Ottawa's special events on city streets bylaw prohibits road closures before 6 p.m. Monday to Friday,
Therefore be it resolved that council approve the above noted rolling road closures to facilitate the law enforcement torch run for Special Olympics between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m. on Friday, October 13th, 2023, providing it meets the requirements, conditions, and approval of traffic services. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Troster. Is the motion carried? Notices of motion for consideration at a subsequent meeting. First, a motion from Councillor Carr.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Whereas August 10th, 2023 saw significant flooding throughout the city, and whereas the city has an emergency management plan designed to provide an enhanced and coordinated level of planning and readiness to better respond to the needs of the community during a major emergency, and whereas the city is experiencing an increasing number of extreme weather events, and with the ongoing climate change emergency, the frequency is expected to continue to increase. And whereas in Canada, flooding is the most common and costly natural disaster, causing approximately $1.5 billion in damage to households, property, and infrastructure annually, with residential property owners bearing approximately 75% of uninsured losses each year. And whereas under Canada's emergency management framework, municipalities have a role in leading local response and recovery. And whereas the Provincial Auditor General's November 2022 report found that municipal assessment and reporting on stormwater infrastructure and flood resilience is not standardized, with potential impacts on long-term planning and funding decisions. And whereas the province and the city have already taken steps to improve our understanding of the impacts of climate change and to help municipalities prepare and protect communities, including public infrastructure. And whereas the province, through Ontario's flooding strategy, states that local governments hold the primary responsibility for identifying and managing flood risks, and therefore, be it resolved that staff ensure that Ottawa.ca provides clear information on and the appropriate way to report different types of flooding events, and be it further resolved that the city's website have a centralized location for flood resources, including flooding preparedness and mitigation methods, updates on ongoing studies, and updates to infrastructure. Be it further resolved that staff review and report back to council with findings on improvements that can be made to preventative flood and water management programs, including the Compassionate Grant Program and the Residential Protective Plumbing Program. And be it further resolved that staff explore a system for better data sharing, communication, timely response, and coordination in relation to major weather events, their impacts on infrastructure, and communicating with affected residents.
All right, thank you, Councillor Carr. Next notice of motion is from Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Mayor. Just regarding budget matters, I'm giving notice of motion seconded by Councillor Brown. Whereas the 2024 budget will bring a set of challenges and under-resourced budget lines, whereas City Council is expected to fund core priorities that residents rely on, and whereas City Council has declared 2 emergencies related to housing and homelessness and climate change, and whereas to better inform Council's decision-making and to be transparent with the public, it is beneficial to understand what budget pressures are core mandated items for the city and which are not. Therefore, be it resolved that as part of the draft 2024 budget release, the acting city treasurer provide a memo identifying what portions of the budget are resourcing non-mandated items. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brockington. Item 22, notices of intent. I'll just note the notice of intent from Hydro Ottawa to hold the annual general meeting at our next council meeting, and also notice of intent from the Integrity Commissioner to submit a report to council at the next council meeting as well. Motion to introduce bylaws. Councillor Gower.
Que les règlements énumérés à l'ordre du jour sous le titre motion.
That a bylaw listed on the agenda under motion to introduce bylaw, 3 readings be read and passed.
Is the motion carried? Confirmation bylaw. Councillor Gower.
Que le règlement suivant soit lu et adopté, règlement ratifiant les délibérations.
That the following bylaw be read and passed to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting of October 11, 2023.
Are there any inquiries? No. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Gower.
Que les délibérations du Conseil du 11.
That the proceedings of the city council meeting of October 11, 2023 be adjourned.
Thank you, everyone. Merci beaucoup.
Good afternoon, bonjour à tous. My name is Kendra Titley and I will be your moderator. Je m'appelle Kendra Titley et je serai l'animatrice de ce point de presse. I will now invite each agency in reverse alphabetical order to ask questions. You may ask one question with a follow-up. Par ordre alphabétique inverse, j'invite maintenant chaque organisme à poser une question et une question de suivi. When asking your questions, please identify who your question is directed to, and if you are in council chambers, please use the microphone. Lorsque vous posez vos questions, veuillez indiquer à qui s'adresse votre question, et si vous êtes dans la salle du conseil, veuillez le faire au micro. We'll now start with, nous allons commencer par Frédéric Papin à Radio-Canada.
Bonjour, Monsieur le maire.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. A question for you. It's hypothetical. It's about the Israel-Palestine situation. We're learning that there are more and more Canadian victims over there. We could get confirmation today regarding our region. We're still waiting for that, for other victims. What do you have to say to families that have a relationship with people that might be over there? What do you tell them? Well, my thoughts are with the Ottawa families having links with that region. Yesterday, I spoke to a family who lost someone killed by the terrorist. And it really breaks my heart. I'm quite concerned with this situation. I've often thought of the victims in the past and the families in Ottawa that have links with that region.
Yesterday, I spoke with a family member who has lost someone in Israel, someone who was killed by the terrorists. And over the last few days, I've been following the events, and it breaks my heart to see what's happening there. And my thoughts are with all of the victims and all of the families in Ottawa who have been affected by what's been happening over the last few days. And it's again, when you speak to someone who has lost a loved one in that region, it hits very close to home. And I know there are many families in Ottawa who are connected to that part of the world, and my thoughts are with all of them.
Qu'est-ce que vous pouvez nous dire sur un peu ce que les résidents d'Ottawa doivent s'attendre d'un point de vue de sécurité pour les prochaines semaines à venir? Il y a des rassemblements devant des synagogues, peut-être même devant des mosquées. Là, on l'a vu dernièrement.
There are meetings in front of synagogues now, and the police of Ottawa had to intervene. And it is a complicated conflict, but will you continue to send the force to those? Well, I must say it's important that we be together in Ottawa to condemn these terrorist acts. And the events in this region should not create divisions here in Ottawa. The police chief said that there are more men on the street close to the religious institutions, and we certainly hope that there won't be any problems. Thank you. Charles-Antoine Gagnon, Le Droit. Well, in the same vein, really, the Ottawa police is always in demand because we are the federal capital. But I was wondering what negotiations are taking place between the city and the police to get financial support to facilitate their work. Well, I don't have any news to tell you. It's a very important issue. Thank you for asking about it. We need to talk about this. The taxpayers in Ottawa pay every year for the police service in the national capital and for all the demonstrations and other events. And it's very expensive. it's important to have new funding from the federal government because it is too expensive for the City of Ottawa residents. Some conversations have been started, but I don't have anything new to communicate to you today. Question 2A. What are you asking specifically to the federal government? And is the federal government already contributing some funds to the City of Ottawa for these services, for the monitoring of embassies? What are you asking specifically to the federal? And do you have an idea of how much the federal is giving already? If so, and how much would you like to have? Well, maybe I can start answering, but every year the federal government contributes $3 million to the city for the security in the national capital. And after that, every time there's an event, involving the Ottawa Police, we talked after the event with the federal government, and we kind of hand over the bill, and every time we have a conversation to get these funds. And what we're asking now is to get a higher amount every year because this is not an ideal situation. What we need is a standard budget, a budget with enough funds for the work that needs to be done every year. So we're talking with the federal in order to get more than 3 million so that we're ready for all the events, and instead of having to turn around and get ready every time there is an event. We have to talk to other police services like in Toronto or the OPP, just so we have enough resources so we can do our work properly every time with a team on site.
So, Cyril, is that consistent with? I just want to make sure I understand something. So if you get 3 million, when there's an event happening, you send a bill to the federal government, but
Yeah.
do they pay? Well, oui. Peut-être il y a quelquefois des négociations.
Well, maybe sometimes we have to negotiate a bit, but in general, yes, that is so.
Yes. So the National Capital Grant is $3 million, but coming from the pandemic and specifically the convoy, we track all of our costs. I work closely with the Ottawa Police Services colleagues, and we submitted those costs into the Public Safety Canada for reimbursement. That is currently going through the process in terms of the audit process of those funds. So as these events become more frequent, more complex, and more diverse, we do work with our colleagues at Public Safety Canada to request additional funding because, again, the frequency is increasing, the diversity, the complexity is increasing. So we track the costs at the event level for all those protests and different dynamics to ensure that we are working with our federal partners to get the right funding to align to the services that we provide.
Mais il y a une autre chose aussi, c'est que il y a une différence.
But there's also something else. There's a difference between a situation when it's an emergency situation and we have extra costs, and a situation where we can plan ahead. So when we can plan ahead, we need a budget to be proactive instead of reactive. So it's not only the cost for the police presence when there's an emergency situation, is to have a plan and to have the required resources in information and in order to plan our reaction to these demonstrations. So it's we need to be more proactive.
And that there's a difference between there's an event that happens and we call on partners in other police organizations, and we have police officers in Ottawa working tons of overtime, and that adds up to a certain cost. And then we ask the federal government to reimburse us for that cost. That's the normal sort of course of events now. And there's a difference between that and a situation where we have the resources in place to plan for these events. And we have the resources in place to work effectively towards protecting the capital. And we have intelligence in place and intelligence gathering in place. And we have the proper plans in place. It's not always reacting, it's being more proactive. So it's having the resources there to address the rising number of these events in Ottawa, as opposed to just simply reacting every time.
Thank you. We'll now go to Sarah Crookall at City News Ottawa.
Hi, Mayor. Just a couple questions. I'm sure you may have probably already heard that the RCMP are investigating the Greenbelt deal regarding Ford. Can you tell me a little bit about your thoughts, given Ottawa has similar lands here?
I think the official plan process in Ottawa was very different from the one in the Toronto area. And so, as you know, City Council has asked the Minister of Housing and Municipal Affairs to review the decisions that were made around the official plan, and we've sent that request to them. So we'll see where that goes. But I think there's, from what I've seen, I wasn't here for any of that, but from what I've seen, there is a difference between how the changes were made to the official plan in Toronto and how they were made here in Ottawa.
Okay, thank you. And my next question is about the LRT and the recommendations that we've had so far regarding the inquiry. What are your thoughts on the progress of that? There's been reports we're halfway there. What do you think?
I'm encouraged by the progress and also by the commitment from staff to follow through on all of the recommendations of the OLRT inquiry. I think that commitment was made clear as soon as the findings of the inquiry came out. I remember Wendy, who was then the interim city manager, speaking to that at the very next council meeting, and every Transit Commission and every light rail subcommittee meeting that we've had since then. There's not necessarily every meeting, but at many of those meetings there have been updates and questions about it. So I'm encouraged by the level of commitment from staff to make sure that we are following through on all the recommendations of the inquiry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now go to Arthur White-Crummy at CBC Radio.
Thanks for this, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to ask, you recently had a meeting about a couple of weeks ago with Sean Fraser, the federal housing minister, and I know that you discussed housing, obviously, and various funding streams for affordable housing. He's conveyed to a few other cities, including Halifax and Calgary, that in order to get access to some of those funding streams, they would have to make various permissive zoning changes to make building housing easier. Some of those seem to even go beyond what's in Bill 23, like allowing 4 units, allowing 4 stories across the central city. I was wondering, did any of that come up during your meeting or subsequently? And did he convey to you that there would be any conditionality in that sense in order to receive that money?
We had a great conversation, and the minister and I and both of our governments want exactly the same thing, which is to build more houses in Ottawa. And we're already reviewing our zoning bylaw and preparing to make changes based on provincial legislation that will increase density throughout the city. And we are working on a plan that I think will go well beyond what the federal government expects from us in terms of the density that we will achieve across the city. So we're continuing to communicate with the minister and his office on the best path forward. But I'm confident that we'll be able to work with the minister and obtain the funding that Ottawa needs to build more housing and more affordable housing in our city.
And did he give you the sense that what's coming from our zoning bylaw as we move forward with it is sufficient to meet the federal government's conditions in that regard, and that we wouldn't have to go further than we're already preparing to?
We're still talking about that, but again, I think we're largely on the same page in the sense that we both want more density, we both want to build more homes, and we have a lot of aggressive plans to do so. And I think it's early in the conversation, but we're sharing those plans with the federal government, and I believe they'll see that we are moving in the direction they want us to, and that it's consistent with their plans, and then we can move forward with the funding application that we've made.
Thanks.
Thank you. We'll next go to Lisa Gura at CBC Ottawa.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, I was wondering if you had spoken with the family of Addie Kaplan.
I don't want to divulge any, without the permission of the family that I spoke with, talk about who I spoke with, but yeah, so I had a private conversation with a member of the community who had lost a loved one in Israel, and that's without the permission of the family. That's all I can say at this point.
Of course, that makes sense. And I also wanted to ask you about Lansdowne. So there's going to be a public meeting tonight that community groups had put together. Obviously, a lot of work has gone into the revisions to the plan, and the plan as it is right now. I wondered if you could speak to how much room there is to get to change plans based on additional feedback from the community.
We're always interested in hearing from the community about everything we're doing, and especially Lansdowne Park. And I know how passionate some people are about this important citywide facility. This belongs to the people of Ottawa. It is our property. It's our site. It's a great gathering point for the community that 4 million people visit every year. So of course, there are going to be some strong opinions about how we should move forward. And we're looking forward to hearing those opinions. This is a delicate balance, though. Obviously, there are people who want to see a lot more density on the site and a lot more development. There are people who want to see a lot less. There are people who are suggesting that we should invest no money in the site. There are people who are suggesting we should invest more. There are debates already about the color of the roof on the arena. So lots of things are going on, which is great. I'm really excited to see that level of engagement. But we have to find a balance between all of that. And we've worked very hard, city staff in particular, and our partners at OSEG have worked very hard to arrive at what we think is a sweet spot. May not make everybody, overjoyed, but sometimes, when you're making a tough decision, you have to find a compromise. You have to find a spot that everybody can live with, or most people can live with. And I think we've arrived at something close to that. So we're going to continue listening to the community leading up to the meetings that we're going to have in early November. But we also have to understand there are many factors to this, and it's a complex deal. So major changes are going to be challenging.
Right. And sorry, just one more thing, and that obviously there's the physical stuff that you mentioned there, but also there have been concerns about financial transparency and that kind of thing. We have the EY report now. I wondered what your thoughts are on the importance of having the agile audit happening at this time.
I'm interested in any analysis that's available. I want to make sure that we're doing all of our due diligence. So that will be helpful, and I'm looking forward to that information. I think this current report that has come out is very transparent, shares a lot of information with the public, answers a lot of the questions that I had been asked and others had been asked leading up to the release of the report. So I think it's very clear. And, as I've said before, we have a choice now because we are going to be investing money in Lansdowne Park for the next 20, 30, 40 years, no matter what. So it's a question of how we want to invest that money. We can invest the money in maintenance and increasing repair costs and increasing energy costs because it is one of the most energy efficient sites in the city. Or we can invest that money in a new plan that's exciting, that will give us new infrastructure that will belong to the people of Ottawa. And so I'm confident that we'll make the right choice.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Elise.
This concludes today's media availability. Ceci conclut le point de presse d'aujourd'hui. Merci. Thank you.